in Pharmaceuticals in association with Higher Secondary Principals Forum.
Hello and welcome. I'm Yheula from GVM's Srimati Nelly Joilda Higher Secondary School, Ponda. Today I'll be teaching Chapter 2 from Flamingo, and the story is titled Lost Spring, Stories of Stolen Childhood. We'll first look at the author. Anees Jung is an Indian author, journalist, and columnist. She started her career in writing with The Young Times, a Times of India publication. Her most known work, Unveiling India, is a chronicle of the lives of women in India. Jung is noted for her lively and vivid descriptions. The lesson that we're doing today, Lost Spring, Stories of Stolen Childhood, focuses on children from deprived backgrounds. Jung analyzes the problem of child labor, the grinding poverty and traditions which condemn these children to a life of deprivation and exploitation. The title of the story is significant. Lost Spring. What does it mean? Spring is the season after winter when we have new life, new shoots emerge, flowers begin blooming, in contrast to winter when growth is slow and nature seems dead. If we compare the stages of man's life to the seasons, spring stands for childhood, a time of play, happiness and joy, free from problems and worries. The protagonists in these two stories, Saheb Alam and Mukesh, are deprived of their childhood. They are burdened with the responsibility of supporting their families. They have lost the spring of their lives. Now, if we look at the problem over here, we find that there are several effects of poverty that can be noticed through the stories that we take up. This lesson is an excerpt from the book Lost Spring, and it contains several stories. It's a collection of stories. And we can notice visibly the effects of poverty. As a result of children being poor, you can notice that there is no schooling. They cannot afford to go to school because their parents cannot afford books, they cannot afford uniforms, and they cannot afford the luxury of keeping their children at school. Instead, they need to send them to work and earn money to support the family. We notice that there is lack of health care. The bangle makers turn blind at their profession. They are working in dingy cells without air, without proper lighting, and this causes blindness. There is poor nutrition, hunger, where they become weak as a result of lack of nutrition, as a result of hunger, and again this leads to illness. They have improper houses, and their houses are not secure places for them to live in. They migrate to cities in search of better opportunities. There is child labor very prevalent over here because of the effects of poverty. We look at the first story. Sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage. Some of the key words and expressions over here: scrounging for gold, meaning digging or searching for something valuable; mutters, that is to speak in a low or inaudible voice; glibly, to speak without thinking; drowned in an air of desolation; immersed or covered with sadness. I'll start with reading the introductory part of the lesson. Sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage. Why do you do this? I asked Saheb, whom I encounter every morning scrounging for gold in the garbage dumps of my neighborhood. Saheb left his home long ago. Set amidst the green fields of Dhaka, his home is not even a distant memory. There were many storms that swept away their fields and homes, his mother tells him. That's why they left, looking for gold in the big city where he now lives. Now, the main points over here are that the writer notices the boys. Every morning, these rag pickers, these garbage pickers are searching the garbage dumps. They are rummaging through piles of garbage. They appear in the morning and leave by noon. She talks to them. She gets to know them individually, their names, their families. She even visits them. They are migrants from Dhaka who left their beautiful green fields and homes because they were washed away constantly by floods. So they have migrated to Delhi. They are living at the outskirts of Delhi. They are living at Simapuri, and they are hoping to have a brighter future over here. Now, the writer focuses on certain aspects. She talks of denied opportunities. Saheb is asked why he is doing this work, and he says he has nothing else to do, which means that he has no choice. He cannot do any other work other than rag picking. The children and the parents, they become partners in survival. Saheb says when a school is built, he will go. There's no school in his neighborhood. However, if you actually look at the situation, Saheb will not be able to go to school even if there is a school in the neighborhood, because he has to work, he has to help support the family, and therefore school is like a luxury to him. There are false promises that seem to abound in the lives of these children. The writer asks Saheb if he will come to school if she starts one, and he is very happy about it. And a few days later, he comes running up to her to ask her if the school is ready, and at this moment she feels embarrassed. She feels ashamed of having made a promise that she did not intend keeping. We notice that there are several ironies in the lives of these children, and there are several paradoxes in their lives. The boy's name is Saheb-e-Alam, Lord of the Universe. However, if you look at his situation, he only seems to be the Lord of the garbage dumps. If you look at the lives of the bangle makers, they make such beautiful bangles. However, their own lives are so miserable. We can notice stark poverty, total poverty among these people. The rag pickers are used to walking barefoot. They make excuses for not wearing chappals. One boy says his mother didn't give them to him, while another, who's wearing shoes that don't match, comments that even if the boy's mother had to give him his shoes, he would not have worn them. Had to give him his chappals, he would not have worn them. A third boy expresses his desire for shoes. The writer observes that most people who walk barefoot try to hide their endless poverty by stating that it is a tradition to stay barefoot. I'll read that line. It is not lack of money, but a tradition to stay barefoot is one explanation. I wonder if this is only an excuse to explain away a perpetual state of poverty. We can notice that times have changed. However, people are still poor and still walk barefoot. The incident of the man from Udupi, who as a young boy prayed for shoes every morning on his way to school, and the prayer of another boy that he should never leave his shoes after he finally got a pair of shoes, tells us that people have a lot more today as compared to the past. However, poverty still exists in the country. Now, we'll move on to the living conditions or life at Simapuri. Now, on the one hand, Simapuri is situated close to Delhi. It lies on the ferry on the boundary of Delhi. However, the writer says it is miles apart metaphorically, considering the amenities, the facilities that are available. In 1971, when most of these migrants came here, it was a wilderness, uninhabited. However, 30 years later, it is a slum colony of 10,000 inhabitants. It is a place inhabited by squatters or illegal occupants. Their houses are made of mud with roofs of tin and tarpaulin. No sewage, drainage or running water. No identity or permits. But having ration cards which enable entry into voters' lists. The writer is making a very strong statement over here. Food is more important for survival than an identity. And for survival in Simapuri means rag picking. Through the years, it has acquired the proportions of a fine art. This means that these rag pickers, they learn to identify and pick up objects and items from the garbage which are of resale value. Garbage is gold for these people. What does this mean? It means that garbage is valuable. It is a means to obtain food and shelter. And the rag pickers comment that sometimes they find a rupee or a 10 rupee note. But when they do this, when they find valuable items, they don't stop rummaging. They rummage even more excitedly because there is hope of finding something more. If you look at the viewpoints of the children and the adults, for the children, garbage is wrapped in wonder. They are hopeful, they are excited, they are full of wonder about what they would find in the garbage. While for the adults, it's just a means of survival. Now, as the writer moves on with the story, she talks about seeing Saheb watching a game of tennis from the fence. And Saheb says he likes the game. The watchman allows him to use the swing when no one is around. She notices that Saheb is also wearing tennis shoes which don't match with his clothes, which are very dull, okay, which are discolored. And Saheb explains that someone has given them to him. He is not bothered that these are shoes which have been thrown away by a rich boy, probably because they have a hole in them. For someone who walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true. However, the writer notices that the game that the boy is watching, which he says he likes, this game of tennis is out of his reach. We end the first part of this lesson and we move on to the second story. The story ends with Saheb on his way to the milk booth. The writer meets him. She notices that Saheb has a new job. He has a steel canister in his hand and he explains that he has a job at a tea stall. He is paid rupees 800 plus gets all his meals. The writer realizes that even though his prospects are better, Saheb isn't really happy. He has lost his carefree looks. He has lost his independence. He is no longer his own boss. She feels that the steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag he would carry so lightly over his shoulder. The bag was his. The canister belongs to the man who owns the tea shop. Saheb is no longer his own master. I want to drive a car. Now Mukesh, the protagonist over here, is a young boy. He has this dream, he has this ambition of becoming a motor mechanic. He wants to drive a car. He wants to be independent. He wants to be his own master. And he is determined to learn, work hard, fulfill his ambitions. He dares to oppose the system. He dares to choose a different profession. He does not want to continue in the bangle making profession. However, his dream seems like a mirage, like an illusion. I'll read from the text. Mukesh's family is among them. None of them know that it is illegal for children like him to work in the glass furnaces with high temperatures, in dingy cells without air and light, that the law, if enforced, could get him and all those 20,000 children out of the hot furnaces where they slog their daylight hours, often losing the brightness of their eyes. Now, if you look at the city of Firozabad, students, you find that it is the center of India's glass blowing industry. You have generations of families that have been engaged in bangle making, and bangles of all colors can be seen everywhere in houses, in yards, in streets. The people over here, they believe in destiny, they believe in karma, they believe in a God-given lineage, and they follow customs and traditions. They join the family profession as children and continue working and teaching the same trade to their children. Daughters-in-law, we notice, veil their faces in the presence of male elders. Now, if you look at the hazards of the glass bangle industry, you have furnaces with high temperatures. people working close together in dingy cells without air and light. Their work results in blindness. Blindness is caused for two reasons. One, because the eyes get more adjusted to the dark than to the brightness outside. They work the entire daylight hours in dim light. And a second reason for causing blindness is the dust from polishing bangles which enters their eyes. If we look at the living conditions at Firozabad, you see stinking lanes choked with garbage, houses with crumbling walls, wobbly doors, no windows, humans and animals living together. So, we notice over here that these people are living miserable lives. They have next to nothing. We meet Mukesh's family. The writer goes to visit Mukesh, and he is very proud because his house is a half-built shack, better than that of others. Mukesh's family is made up of his father, his elder brother, sister-in-law, and grandmother. His father was a poor bangle maker. He began working as a tailor and switched over to the bangle making profession. He has failed to educate his two sons and has only succeeded in teaching them his trade. However, he has managed to build a house even though it is incomplete. It is partly with a thatched roof. Now, as we move on, we notice that the writer considers how important bangles are in the lives of the Indian women. Bangles symbolize an Indian woman's suhag, marital status. They symbolize auspiciousness in marriage, which is actually noticed by red bangles which are worn by the bride. Savita, a young girl in a drab pink dress, sits alongside an elderly woman soldering pieces of glass. As her hands move mechanically like the tongs of a machine, I wonder if she knows the sanctity of the bangles she helps make. It symbolizes an Indian woman's suhag, auspiciousness in marriage. It will dawn on her suddenly one day when her head is draped with a red veil, her hands dyed red with henna, and red bangles rolled onto her wrists. She will then become a bride, like the old woman beside her, who became one many years ago. She still has bangles on her wrist, but no light in her eyes, meaning that the old woman is still married, but she has almost turned blind. This woman complains. She says she has not even enjoyed one full meal in her entire lifetime. So we notice over here that these people work hard, they struggle all their lives, yet they don't even have one proper meal in a day. All I know nothing except bangles. All I've done is make a house for the family to live in. When we hear such statements, we realize that probably some of these people have achieved something by at least being able to have a roof over their heads. What are the complaints of these bangle makers? What are the effects of their profession? Over the years, if we notice, there have hardly been any changes in their living conditions. The youngsters complain or have the same complaints as the elders. Their mechanical, dull and repetitive work has wiped away their ability to think, to hope and dream. They are scared of forming cooperative societies due to victimization by the police because they know that if any crimes are committed, they will be wrongly blamed for them and beaten up by the police. They are caught in two distinct worlds, one of the family trapped in poverty, burdened by their traditional occupations, the other, the deadly circle of the saukars, middlemen, policemen, the keepers of law, the bureaucrats and the politicians. This story ends on an optimistic note. I'll read that. When the writer sees a flash of daring in Mukesh, she says, I am cheered. I want to be a motor mechanic, he repeats. He will go to a garage and learn, but the garage is a long way from his home. I will walk, he insists. Do you also dream of flying a plane? The writer asks. He is suddenly silent. No, he says, staring at the ground. In a small murmur, there is an embarrassment that has not yet turned into regret. He is content to dream of cars that he sees hurling down the streets of his town. Few airplanes fly over Firozabad. So the story ends on an optimistic note. It ends with Anish Jung asking Mukesh if he also dreams of flying a plane. Mukesh says he doesn't, but he has no regrets, as there are very few planes that he sees over Firozabad. However, he sees plenty of cars, and he knows that this dream of his is realistic and attainable. It is very likely to come true. Before we end, students, I'd like to emphasize that all the slides have been made keeping in mind the questions that are asked based on this lesson. So if you look at the slides, you have all the answers to the questions that have been asked. With that, I will end my presentation, and we come to an end of this lesson, Lost Spring, Stories of Stolen Childhood.
Prudent Scholars, powered by Lupin Pharmaceuticals.